Hello friends, welcome back to another video. Before I get too far into this, we are going to be talking about the US dollar today and the recent price action that's been going on, as well as what I think could be in for the next week or so. So stay tuned on that. Before I do get too far, I do want to remind you guys, if you're not already in our Telegram, we got a free Telegram. It is linked down below in the description. We've got a couple people who are working in here to share analysis and up-to-date stuff. The reason I wanted to point that out, again, the link is down below in the description, is because there's a lot going on with the US dollar right now, and there will probably be some more coverage that may be useful to you in our Telegram channel, which again is linked down below in the description for you to grab for free. So the dollar today is down pretty nicely here. We are seeing some rejection off of the 93.2 level that we've talked about for the last several weeks. Now, I want to give my thoughts about the US dollar as we do go into some big news tomorrow. Today is Tuesday. Tomorrow we have the Fed meeting, or the FOMC, which has the potential to be very market moving for the US dollar. So I wanted to share my thoughts as well as sort of decipher what's going on with this recent price action, where we are seeing a very strong sell-off starting out this week. You can see both Monday and Tuesday today coming in very, very weak for the dollar. This is the DXY, the dollar currency index. This is basically the dollar against a basket of other currencies. We could take a look at some of the individual ones, but before we do, what is going on and why is this pulling back? Well, one thing I will say, my first reaction to this is that we are seeing a little bit of a tired dollar trend to the upside, in my opinion. Now, if we scroll out, before we look at this thing too closely, if we scroll out here, you can notice that the US dollar over the long period of time has actually continued to go down. We're seeing lower highs and levels of supply. And the further you zoom out, you can see there's been this very, very strong downtrend since 2020. So where does that bring us today? Well, I think that it is possible that you have some concerned bulls here who are saying, hey, well, it's been a good run, but it may be time to give the sellers back their territory and to see this thing roll over on the US dollar. Now, again, we have very big news tomorrow that could be market moving. We're hearing monetary policy from the Fed, which could change things completely, but I want to give you guys my thoughts going into it. Are we bullish? Are we bearish on the dollar? Well, in my opinion, I think that we may see some short-term bearishness on the US dollar. And here's why. From a technical analysis standpoint, you've got a very interesting chart pattern that is forming here. So we had this little concept where we had a strong pop off of the Fed's hawkish tone concerning rate hikes and things like that. But we have not heard a lot of follow through in terms of talking about tapering and handling all of this inflationary concern that we have here in the United States. With that said, to me, the trend here looks a bit like it has been pushed through. It looks like we've run our course here, at least for now. We are seeing, like I said, a pullback here today, which is actually even compromising some really interesting levels on the lower time frames. Let's pull up the 4-hour view. And what you've got here is a very interesting little concept. You've got price basically holding this trend line beautifully that we marked on the daily chart, and you can see it even better on the 4-hour view. Multiple times where price had dipped and then the dollar bulls came running back in to bid this thing back up. But today we are seeing a little bit of a difference in that narrative. You're seeing price actually put in some lower highs and finally actually breaking underneath that beautiful upward structure that we've had for the last few weeks, and has been creating some really great buying opportunities on the dollar against some of the other currencies. So one other thing that I wanted to point out, look at this candle right here. We zoom really close in. Look at this candle right here. On the previous 4-hour bar, well, I guess the two previous bars now, you saw this really strong push to the upside that was met with equally, if not more, strength to the downside, rejecting that retest of the trend line here. That's a big deal from a technical analysis perspective because it shows that we were not able to put in a higher high like the overall uptrend pattern was sort of suggesting we may, right? On top of that, not only that, you had massive follow through here. And now what this is telling me is that the dollar seems very controlled by the bears until further notice, in combination with that idea that on the higher time frames, we basically rejected that 93.3 level, and it may even threaten here to put in a lower high overall on this market, which could be, like I said, it could be lead to a week, 2 weeks of sell pressure on the US dollar. Now, the thing I will caution you guys before you jump into any short position positions or, rush to make any decisions. First of all, please know this is not financial advice. You should go make your own decisions. This is just my opinion about the US dollar. But one thing I want to add here is that we do have very market moving news for the rest of this week. So let me pull that up for you guys. So Forex Factory has a couple things here for you to check out. So you've got the fact that we've got the Fed meeting here on Wednesday. You can see right here in the red folder, you've got this big movement right there. That is going to be scheduled to happen on Wednesday, July 28th at 2:30 p.m. That could be, 2 and 2:30. You've got two different potentially market moving spots there. So the whole afternoon there for the U.S. could be market moving for the U.S. dollar. Anything that is said by the Fed has the potential to move the markets for the dollar and things like gold, etc. On top of that, you've also got on Thursday, you've got advanced GDP, which is very potentially market moving as well. As one of the main drivers, or at least in my view, one of the main drivers for the US dollar has been that strong bounce back in GDP. You've seen a lot of strength come in for the US dollar off of this recovery period that we've been in. If that number comes out as less than expected or less optimistic than possible, be on the lookout for a major drop in the US dollar. Because like I said, although the trend has been very, very strong, it is sort of showing some signs of weakness. It's showing some signs of slowdown. Notice something with me here. Check this out. So I'm going to use an arrow for this. So if we look at the arrow here, right? And then we look at an arrow here, right? We're sort of just drawing things across the upward structure that we're seeing. Well, if you notice that scenario number one is very different than scenario number two. In scenario number one, you had this strong, momentous, uptrend that just was not stopping for anybody or anything off of the news of, rate hike potentials here on the dollar. Well, then we started to enter into a follow-through period, which I still caught some nice trades on the long side for the US dollar, but have since sort of paused as we have sort of started to slow down a little bit here, and now even looking like we may be entering into a sideways or even bearish portion of time for the US dollar. So these are things to be watching out for. Now, the one thing I will say that will completely nullify everything that I've said here, in my opinion, and which would cause me to look for more bullish upside, would be if we see something substantial from the Fed tomorrow, maybe talks of tapering, something to combat inflation and offset some of the fears around the US dollar. That could be enough to maybe poke us back up into an uptrend and maybe even get us through the highs, which is where I would look for more upside. So for me with the dollar, I am paused on my overbearing, bullishness that I've had in the last few weeks. I was bullish for quite a period of time on a lot of these different crosses, things like Euro USD, I've been short biased on, things like dollar yen, I've been long biased on, but now have sort of paused on all of that. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm waiting for the news tomorrow to see if we have anything that is really groundbreaking. One thing I will say is that the gold markets are still very, very quiet. We're not seeing things move too much here, but I did want to point out Bitcoin, for example. Maybe there's a little bit of an argument here to be said that maybe with some concerns around the US dollar, some weakness there, and maybe dovishness and even inflationary concerns, could that be a positive catalyst for Bitcoin? Kind of an interesting concept to play around with. We did tag and tried 40,000 there. And so for me, if price is able to stay above 40,000, that would be back to bullish territory for Bitcoin, as Bitcoin has this very interesting nature where it has a lot of momentum to it. If things get running to the upside, sometimes they can just run away. We've seen that actually many times on the Bitcoin market, both to the upside and to the downside. So if we're seeing a little bit of a shift in the narrative there on the dollar, that could actually be an extra catalyst for Bitcoin. So a couple of markets for you to consider. Take a look at Bitcoin, take a look at some of the US dollar crosses. Euro USD is pulling back off the lows pretty strongly here today. I've mentioned levels like 1.188 as a potential level of resistance should things come trailing a little bit higher. May look for that opportunity to short the euro. I'm not a big fan of the euro, but again, going to be a little cautionary with all of this dollar weakness to try and jump in front of it on the long side. So with that said, you guys, that's all I've got for you today. I think that short term, the dollar looks like it may have a little bit of bearishness. We'll see if I'm right about that. That is just my perspective and opinion. Thank you very much for being here. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and we'll see you back in the next video.